Welcome to Inside the Mavs. Kevin Gray, Mavs Pre and Post Game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network 97.1 The Freak. Appreciate you joining me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast for free. Of course, Inside the Mavs is the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, your home of Dallas Mavericks basketball. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. You can find my partner Grant Afseth on Twitter at Grant Afseth. He is traveling with the team in Memphis as the Dallas Mavericks begin a back-to-back with a game on the road in Memphis on Monday. Then they take on the Los Angeles Lakers on Tuesday, the newly minted in-season tournament champion Los Angeles Lakers. They will visit the American Airlines Center on Tuesday. Got a lot to get to in this episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcast for free. You can also watch it on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to subscribe there as well. And you can follow Inside the Mavs on Twitter at Inside the Mavs, where you can see our podcast drops, our videos, and everything else in between for the Inside the Mavs podcast. Really appreciate you joining us, however and wherever you may be listening to me on this particular episode. Our Monday show here as the Mavericks, as I mentioned, take on the Memphis Grizzlies, who coming off a disappointing 127-103 loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Meanwhile, your Dallas Mavericks have won their last two games to move to 13-8 on the season after getting a 50-point win over the Utah Jazz and then backing that up with a 13-point win on the road against the Portland Trail Blazers, looking to get their third consecutive win before they come home to the American Airlines Center. We'll get into the Mavs Grizzlies preview a little bit later on in the show, but want to dive into a couple of things in this episode today before I get to Mavericks and Grizzlies on Monday night, and then, of course, the Mavs taking on the Lakers on Tuesday. There was an interesting conversation that I was listening to with Zach Lowe and JJ Redick of ESPN on a recent episode of the Low Post podcast, where they were talking about the most confusing teams in the NBA. And one of the teams that they had brought up was the Dallas Mavericks. And one of the subsets of that conversation, the question was posed, and I wanted to borrow and bring it to the MFFLs and Mavs fans, is that who is the Mavericks' third best player? We obviously know that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are the two best players on this team currently. Now, Kyrie Irving is going to be out of Monday's game as he's dealing with a right heel contusion that he suffered during the second quarter of the game against the Portland Trail Blazers after Dwight Powell fell on his right leg. He continues, does Irving, to be evaluated day to day. We know that he's missing at least the Memphis Grizzlies game on Monday and potentially the Lakers game on Tuesday. The Mavericks are the walking wounded right now with several guys that are going to be out from Monday's game. Not only will Kyrie Irving be out, Josh Green continue to deal with his right elbow strain. Grant Williams dealing with right knee soreness. And, of course, Maxi Kleber remains out with his toe dislocation. More on that a little bit later on. But the question being, who is the Mavericks' third best player? And I put a poll question out there on my Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports, and I listed a few names, whether it be Grant Williams, Derek Lively II, Derek Jones Jr., who's been really good so far this season for the Mavs, and other. And overwhelmingly, nearly 1,700 votes from Mavericks fans, basketball fans, the MFFLs, 86% of you said that Derek Lively II is already the Mavericks' third best player. Now, on the one hand, that's really, really good news if you're looking not just at the short-term future of this team, but the long-term future as well, that a 19-year-old who has come in, has played really well on both ends of the floor for the most part, still looking for that consistency night in and night out from him, has already become the team's third best player. Now you say, Kevin, I don't necessarily feel that idea, especially after I brought in Grant Williams to be a part of this team, to be a knockdown three-point shooter and provide some physicality and defense on that side of the floor, especially knowing he can guard multiple positions on the defensive end. I've also got a guy in Tim Hardaway Jr. who comes off the bench. And yes, he's provided me sixth man of the year type of play so far through 21 games. I feel like maybe he should be the third best player on this team. Let's look at it from both sides. We'll start on the positive side here because, I'm a positive guy. I like to see things from the bright side of things. Derek Lively II so far has been sensational for this team, shooting over 70% from the field, a guy who has provided shot blocking, rim protection, athleticism, getting up and down in transition, has been a really effective in the pick and roll with Luka Doncic. And what's really, really cool is that you're hearing from Luka Doncic himself specifically that teams are now having to make decisions on how they defend the pick and roll between Doncic and Lively. That's because Lively has been that effective at the rim, being able to finish most of the time with authority. And now he's also become a little bit of a playmaker out of the short roll as well. His basketball IQ and what he continues to grow and learn on a daily basis is really exciting to see as he continues to see the game slow down for him. His ability to be a little bit of a playmaker and a passer out of the post and be able to find open shooters adds yet another dimension to this offense that makes it that much more lethal. When you're playing with Luka Doncic, you're already going to get a lot of open shots as it is to begin with. Same with Kyrie Irving. But if guys like Derek Lively II and others can be playmakers, not only out of the post, and for guys like Derrick Jones Jr., also for a guy like Dante Exum to be able to attack the rim and then be able to pass the ball as well to open shooters such as Doncic, Irving when he's healthy, Tim Hardaway Jr., and others, Steph Curry alongside as well, that's when this team really becomes difficult to stop. They were already difficult enough to stop on the offensive end with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving making the offensive music together that they do on a night-to-night basis. But now you start adding a guy in Derek Lively who not only finishes at the rim and now is able to be a little bit of a playmaker, everyone else continues to be that much better. So the growth from Lively is encouraging given the lack of production that you saw at Duke and now the opportunities that he's had so far in the league through 21 games to really show what kind of player that he is. And if that is the case, as he continues to add to his offensive game with a little bit of a baby hook and a little bit of a mid-range, if that's something that becomes a part of his game and then becomes a little bit better of a jump shooter as he continues to go on not only through the rest of this season, but over the next couple of years as well, you're talking about a guy that's going to add a lot of dimension to his game that along with the defensive end and the motor that he has, because that's something that I've personally talked to him about, is the idea that he wants to be a guy that brings high energy night in and night out, both offensively and defensively. All of those things put together are really encouraging signs about why Derek Lively is so high on people's lists on what it looks like for a potential rookie of the year, but more importantly for Mavericks fans, why they are excited about his growth and continued maturity within both the offense and the defense. Now let's go to the other side of that when it comes to Derek Lively II, already for a lot of people being the Mavericks' third best player. He's a 19-year-old rookie, and the amount of dependence on a 19-year-old necessarily shouldn't have to be there. For me, if you're going to go down this route, it's a little bit unfair to ask a guy who didn't show a lot of production at Duke, but yes, has played so far so well this year for the Mavericks, to have that much of an impact already in his rookie year, when if you felt like the Mavericks could have gone out and got a veteran center like a Clint Capella or take your pick to maybe take some of that pressure off of Derek Lively, you could feel better about slow playing his growth and maturity. But on the other hand, you could say, hey, throw the rookie into the fire. Let's see what he's got. Can he work with Luka Doncic? Can he work with Kyrie Irving? Can he show enough to be able to give guys potential to feel like he is the answer down the road? The Mavericks have found their long-term center in Derek Lively II. Now it's about working through the growing pains of his rookie mistakes, which he's going to make. He still has to continue to learn to play without fouling, stay out of foul trouble, because we know what the numbers look like when it comes to the defensive efficiency when he is and when he isn't off the floor. This team is much better, and you can even do the eye test and see how much better this team is defensively when he is on the floor. Because at the high end of this, now go with me on this here, the high end of this is that Derek Lively becomes a Rudy Gobert type, a Tyson Chandler type, where he erases the mistakes of his perimeter defenders when guys get blown by and be able to protect the rim with shot blocking and rim deterrence, and then be able to defensively collect rebounds to push his team in transition. I'm not saying that he's going to be a defensive player of the year, a multi-time defensive player of the year, but you've seen enough potential to where he can be a high-end defensive player that can give you some of those characteristics about what he could be in the future. That, again, is a terrific and exciting part about Lively. But the dependence on seeing those things already as a 19-year-old may be a little bit concerning as a Mavericks fan. How do those concerns get alleviated? Consistency, growth, and continuity on both offense and, most importantly, on defense. Because right now, the Mavericks are a bottom 20 team in terms of defensive efficiency. Last time I checked, this team was 23rd in defensive efficiency, top 5 in offensive efficiency, which puts them at around 12th in the NBA in overall net rating. They're going to continue to play with pace because we've seen enough games, we have enough of a sample size now to believe in the idea that this team will continue to play with the type of top 10 pace that we've seen so far this year. So if you're going to play at a quicker pace, if you're going to be a devastatingly good offensive team, you've got to be able to find a way to get stops in the last 4 or 5 minutes of ball games in clutch time, where the Mavericks so far have been really good. And again, that means Derek Lively has got to be on the floor to be able to provide that rim protection on the defensive end, but also on the offensive end, really threaten teams with his ability to finish and then be able to hopefully knock down free throws, because he's going to get a lot of and one opportunities because of the pick and roll situation that he's going to work in. So that's the best parts of Derek Lively and some of the concerns you may have with him being your third best player. The other part being, if you feel like that rookie is already a third best player on your team, what does that say about maybe some of your roster construction? Because for me, going into the season, I felt like with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and the acquisition of Grant Williams, those are going to be your top 3 best players on the team. The versatility of a Grant Williams, who we saw early on this season, was really hot to start from the three-point line, has cooled off significantly, and now missing the last couple of games as he deals with knee soreness. Once he comes back, he has to emerge as this team's third best player. While Derek Lively can be a huge and integral part of this team, he cannot be this team's third best player already to start out the season. We say, Kevin, don't you want to see that continued growth in Lively so far and throughout the rest of the season? Sure, I do. But the pressure put on him to have to be that is unfair, at least in my opinion, to him. That's where guys like Grant Williams come in, and they have to be able to show the ability to be able to take on that role. With that being said, kudos to Lively and the way that he's performed so far this year, because he has earned a lot of confidence in Mavericks fans about his abilities going forward, and the continued work that he continues to do with Tyson Chandler will only serve him to be that much better as a player and as an all-around player in this league. And for Mavericks fans, that is really exciting. Derek Lively II so far has been proven to be a really good player. He will only get better as the rest of the season goes on. And more importantly, when you look at how successful he's been, that shows you going forward that the continuity of this team not only grows, but now the depth of this team will be tested as we see over the next couple of games how injuries are going to take a toll on this team. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, Kyrie Irving going to be out at least for the Memphis game with the right heel contusion. Josh Green already out dealing with the right elbow strain. Grant Williams dealing with knee soreness. Maxi Kleber still out with the right small toe dislocation. The depth of the Mavericks is going to be tested over the next several games. That begins in Memphis on Monday, continues on Tuesday against the Los Angeles Lakers, who are playing really good basketball right now. You saw how much of a monster Anthony Davis was in the in-season tournament final with a 40-20 performance that he had in the game against the Pacers. So for the Mavericks, it starts with taking care of business against the Memphis Grizzlies on Monday, coming home on the second night of a back-to-back to take on a really good Lakers team that's playing with some really good confidence right now. See Austin Reeves and the way that he was playing throughout that game in the in-season tournament final in Vegas as well. One thing that Mavericks fans and folks like myself who cover and watch this team are going to be looking forward to is seeing how the depth of this Mavericks team responds to the injuries that they're dealing with. Hello, Seth Curry. Hello, A.J. Lawson, Dante Exum, Derek Jones Jr., Jaden Hardy, and others. All of these guys will be put to the test about what their abilities are to be able to step in for Grant Williams, for Kyrie Irving, for Josh Green as well to be able to keep things moving forward for this team, which means they've got to take advantage of what they have in beating the Memphis Grizzlies. They need to ensure that they do that on Monday night and then get ready to take on the Los Angeles Lakers. You look at the Memphis Grizzlies, Desmond Bane, who's been really good over his last 10 games, averaging nearly 25 points per game and over 5 assists per game in his last 10. Jaren Jackson also averaging over 20 points per game in his last 10. Memphis, though, 4-6 in their last 10 games overall. Mavericks are 5-5 in their last 10, but have won their last couple of games, as I mentioned, over Utah and over Portland. The Mavericks have got to ensure that they get a monster performance from Luka Doncic, whom is going to be needed and counted upon to do all the facilitating, a lot of the scoring. But if you're a guy in Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr., who have been two of the most pleasant surprises for this team this season, you continue to support your superstar in that way. For example, you saw what Dante Exum did against the Portland Trailblazers, stuffing the stat sheet with over 20 points, over 5 assists, over 5 rebounds as well, providing defense, getting up and down in transition. And one of the more important things for him now going forward is his aggressiveness in knocking down shots from the outside, especially from the three-point line. Because as we mentioned, this team is going to score a ton of points. But if now I'm getting shots being made from the three-point line by Dante Exum, along with Derrick Jones Jr., who so far is having a career year for the Dallas Mavericks, along with Tim Hardaway Jr., along with Seth Curry, especially as we mentioned how the depth of this team is going to be tested, this team has got a chance to continue to move forward in devastating opponents on the offensive end. All of that, though, will remain to be seen over the next several games as the injuries continue to pile up for this team. If that is the case, though, Dante Exum, also Derrick Jones Jr. are going to be counted upon heavily to provide quality minutes for this team, and guys off the bench like an AJ Lawson, who have been finding themselves getting more opportunities as well, they're going to have to be better when it comes to helping this team win games also. So there's a lot to take in for this Mavericks team over the next few games. As I mentioned, taking on Memphis on Monday before coming home to take on the Los Angeles Lakers. What we learn about this team over the next couple of games with the depth being tested, Luka Doncic continue to move forward as a first-team All-NBA selection. They've got to handle business against Memphis because the last time these two teams got together on December 1st, the Grizzlies got a 108-94 win where Desmond Bane had 30 points. Grant Williams led the Mavericks in scoring that night with 16. Oh, that's right. He's not around for this game. So we will see how the Mavericks continue to move forward when it comes to their abilities to handle business against the Memphis Grizzlies on Monday and then again on Tuesday against the Lakers. But if you're a Mavericks fan, you are really excited about what you've seen so far through the first 21 games. While, yes, there's still a lot to be desired defensively for this team when it comes to their consistency in terms of communication and rotation and overall defense through the first 3 quarters, especially offensively, they have been really, really good. And for Jason Kidd, you can thank him for Dante Exum and what he's brought so far to this team. I was talking with someone about Dante Exum and so far how he's performed. While they may not have necessarily expected him to perform the way that they have, they were telling me that Jason Kidd really expected this from Dante Exum because of his size, his length, his passing ability, and we've seen the athleticism and his ability to get up and down in transition and really cause havoc on the defensive end. And that's where things really start to flip up because here's the thing. As good as Dante Exum has been so far this year, it makes you think and wonder, what if the Mavericks had a all-star type of forward or guard with the kind of length, size, and athleticism that could really allow Dante Exum to come off the bench and then provide that type of play that he's providing so far in a bench role. Again, the Mavericks are getting everything that they can out of the guys that are available on the roster, and that's all that you can do based on what they have right now. But it does make you think if they have a guy, for example, like an OG Anunoby, someone of that caliber, what this team could really look like on both ends of the floor and how that allows guys to slide into their natural roles coming off the bench. But for now, this is what this team has to rely on. Exum, Derrick Jones Jr., and others being able to be real significant contributors to this team to allow them to move forward and grow while the injuries pile up and they deal with. The depth of this team will be tested and tested severely over the next few games. But if you're the Dallas Mavericks, this is going to be something that you can take with you going forward for the rest of the season. Because if these guys continue to perform well from an offensive and defensive perspective, that gives you confidence if you're a Mavericks fan that when you get into tough situations down the road, other guys will be able to respond. And if that is the case, now you've got something there. Because the goal for this team, obviously, is to finish top 6 in the West. You don't want to be middling around in a play-in spot, especially when you have the kind of roster that you do, and with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving being at the top of that. But so far, so good through 21 games of the season, and you have to make sure that you shout out the guys who are playing well and doing well so far. And those are guys like Dante Exum and also Derrick Jones Jr., who has really become a knockdown three-point shooter, which for a lot of us, including me, didn't necessarily see coming. All that being said, though, the Mavericks through 21 games, really good offensively, a lot of questions still defensively, but more importantly, they are playing the kind of basketball that as they continue to grow in terms of its consistency and find a way to get stops down the road, especially deep in the ball games with the growth of apparently the third best player on this team and Derek Lively II, got a chance to make some noise in the West. How sustainable is this going to be? That to me is the biggest question, because I don't know about you, trying to play this kind of spectacular offense on a night-to-night basis while having the inability to defend consistently, it appears, while not also rebounding the basketball as well. We know that Dwight Powell is much maligned for his inability to rebound the basketball. Rashawn Holmes and others are going to have to find ways to help contribute to this team when they have the opportunities to do so. How sustainable is this for the rest of the season? That will be something we find out through the rest of this NBA season, is how good are the Mavericks when it comes to this style of play, which they've embraced. Getting up and down the floor in transition, knocking down a bunch of outside shots, being able to run the pick and roll with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and Derek Lively II, as long as Derek Lively stays out of foul trouble. And then once they get healthy, can Grant Williams specifically find himself getting back to the kind of player that we saw through the first several games of the season, which is a guy that was providing energy on the defensive end, but also knocking down a bunch of shots from the outside on the offensive end. All of these things are things that we will continue to monitor as this season goes on. But as the Mavericks take on the Memphis Grizzlies, they've got to slow down Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson to start off with, a team of the Memphis Grizzlies who has struggled at home so far this year, 1-9 so far in Memphis, 6-15 overall. This should be a game that the Dallas Mavericks handle comfortably, much like they've done against the Utah Jazz, and then on the road against the Portland Trail Blazers, where you give the Blazers a lot of credit. Scrappy were able to stick in that game. Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons really kept them in that game in terms of their shooting and their ability to get to the rim at times during that game. They will need to do the same if you're the Mavericks in terms of containing guys like Desmond Bane and also Jaren Jackson Jr. If so, Mavericks should be able to win Monday night. Now, Tuesday, it's a whole different ball game when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers with all the firepower that they have, whether it be LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves, who you could probably consider their third best player based off the way that he's been playing so far this year. You get contributions from others like a D'Angelo Russell, who, when he isn't shooting his team out of ball games at times, the Lakers defensively are really, really good. And that is going to be something that the Mavericks will have to contend with on Tuesday, is the defensive prowess that Darvin Ham's teams bring in terms of the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, that will be for Tuesday. The business has to be handled on Monday as the Mavericks take on the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, shorthanded, no Kyrie Irving, no Grant Williams, no Josh Green, no Maxi Kleber right now for the Mavericks. Shout out to Luka Doncic to getting a massive triple-double, because they're going to need it from him in order to win the game on Monday and then get ready to take on the Lakers on Tuesday. Appreciate you joining me here on this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, you can download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Search Inside the Mavs. Give the podcast a 5-star rating. Write a review for the podcast while you're there. Grant will be back with me on Wednesday to recap what happened Monday against the Grizzlies and Tuesday against the Los Angeles Lakers as the Mavericks have a back-to-back on the road in Memphis and then finish up at the AAC on Tuesday against the Los Angeles Lakers. There will be a lot to talk about coming out of those two games. Grant will be back with me on Wednesday to recap all of that. You can find him on Twitter at Grant Afseth, and make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel at Grant Afseth as well. You can do the same for my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, and also follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports as well, and do the same for Inside the Mavs. Again, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Until Wednesday, my name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak. Grant and I will talk to you on Wednesday right here on Inside the Mavs. We'll talk to you later. Peace.